Hello, my name is Ása and this is the course Lærum Íslensku or Let's Learn Icelandic, and today I'm going to give you the first sort of a formal, purely grammatical lesson, and we're going to talk about the article, the indefinite and the definite articles in Icelandic. And by this I mean, of course, like the equivalent in English when you say a house, an apple, or the house or the apple. The first part of this lesson is very easy, possibly the easiest grammar lesson that you will ever have in Icelandic, because the indefinite article doesn't exist in Icelandic. It does not exist. So you don't need to learn it. The only thing that you need to learn is that it does not exist. What do I mean by this? I mean that when you would say this is a house in English, in Icelandic, you will just say this is house. There is no a. So you would say in Icelandic, þetta hús. Þetta means this, means is, and hús means house. There is no article at all, even though these exist in Scandinavian, at least in Danish, Swedish, Norwegian. They exist in Dutch and in German and all the Roman languages, Italian, Spanish, French, etc. And basically everywhere except for in Icelandic. So this is the moment where Icelandic is easy. But now we get on to the definite article, or the equivalent of the in English. And this is more difficult in Icelandic compared to English for sure, compared to Danish and Scandinavian for sure. More difficult than in Spanish, definitely. It is more difficult than in German and in Italian, but not like by a crazy amount. So it's completely doable. It's not like crazy difficult, but it's more difficult than in English for sure. The reason for this is, of course, that we have the definite article. We have three versions in the singular, meaning masculine, female, and neutral gender, and we also have three versions in the plural. We have masculine, female, and neutral versions in the plural. So it's completely doable, but it's not completely trivial, so let's just go through it. First of all, when we say definite article, in Icelandic, this we call ákveðin greinir, where ákveðin means definite and greinir means article. But since we don't have any indefinite article in Icelandic, we don't usually need to specify the ákveðin, so usually we just call it greinir. Greinir. And from now on, I will always just call it greinir. I won't be bothered with the English word. Now I'm just going to assume that you understand when I say greinir, I mean this article thing system. Contrary to what we have in English and Spanish and German, the article or the greinir, it's not actually in front of the word, but we add it to the end of the word in the same way that the Danish, Swedes and Norwegians do. So it's not self-standing, but it actually becomes a part of the word. The basic simple rule is this: if we are in the singular, when we have only one of each object, then we add the greinir as follows. In with two n's, we add two masculine words. In with one n, we add two feminine words. And if with I and an eth, we add two neutral words. Okay, so the basic rule is this: in, ith. I will give you some examples. First of all, a man, maður in Icelandic, when we add the greini, it's maðurinn. Maðurinn. Gulrót is a feminine word in Icelandic for carrot, gulrót. When we add the greinir, we say gulrótin. Gulrótin. And then finally we have, for example, barn. Barn, which means a child or a baby. And this is a neutral word in Icelandic, and then we add eð, and it becomes barnið. Barnið. So 2 n's for masculine, 1 n for female, and then the eð for the neutral. The exception from these rules, of course there is an exception, but it's not complicated. The exception is if the word ends with an I, we drop the I of the greinir, we don't put 2 I's. So basically I don't think any word in Icelandic has 2 I's in a row. It doesn't happen. So then we just use the I that is already there and we only add the n's or the eð. An example of this is, for example, the word banani, which means a banana. This is a masculine word that ends with an e, and then when we add the greini, with greini, then it becomes bananin. Bananin. So here we just use the I that is already there and we don't bother with adding a new one. Then an example of a female word is the word hendi. Hendi. This is a word that we discussed in some other lessons, but this basically means like if you touch the ball with your hand in soccer, then this is the foul that you get, like the hand foul. I don't know what it's called in English, I'm sorry for this, but basically this is what it's called. And then when we put the greinir, then it's simply hendin. Hendin. And I should add here that having a female word that ends with I is very, very rare. But then if we go to a neutral word that ends with I, one example is epli. Epli, which means an apple. And then when we add the greinir and want to say the apple, then we say eplið. 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 Like you can see, if the I is already there, then we don't add it, we only add the rest. Okay, so this is almost the entire story, almost. There's just one tiny rule that we need to add, and that is, like I said before, is almost never that female words end with I. It's very, very rare and it's almost never happened, but very, very, very many Icelandic words end with a, similar to 5 female words in Spanish and Italian. So when a word in the dictionary form ends with an a, it's usually female. And then instead of adding the in, we also only add the n. So we only add the n and not the I. Examples of this is, for example, kona, which means a woman. Then if we want to say the woman, we say konan. Konan. Another example is stelpa. This means a girl. If we want to add the greinir and say the girl, then we say stelpan. Stelpan. So overall, it is not complicated. The greinir in the singular form is this: inn, in, ið, and the I is sometimes dropped. Okay, let's now move on to the plural. Okay, let's move on to the plural. And then we do the same. We don't put it in front of the word, but we add it to the word. And to masculine plural words, we say irnir. Irnir. Female plural words, we say gnar. Gnar. And then finally, plural neutral words, we add the in. In. So it's actually the same as female singular. In. So let's make examples of this. What does this mean in practice? If we have men in plural, men in English is almost the same as in Icelandic, where we say men. And then when we add the greinir and say the men, we say mennirnir. Mennirnir. Okay? Women in Icelandic is konur. Konur. And when we add the greinir, we say konurnar. Konurnar. And then finally, the plural of babies is börn. Börn. And when we add the greinir, it becomes börnin. Börnin. Okay, so it's mennirnir, konurnar og börnin. Again, mennirnir, konurnar og börnin. The main exception of this is when the plural ends with an R in the male form, we drop the first ir. Okay, so we only say dnir. This we can see, for example, in the word strákar, strákar, which means boys, strákar, boys. When we add the male greinir, we say strákarnir, strákarnir. And actually this male ending in the plural is much more common than the one that we have in mennirnir, because men is actually irregular form in a irregular plural, but when we have regular plurals they almost always end with R in the male and the female form. So the most common addition to a male plural form of a word is dnir, like strákarnir, stelpurnar og börnin. So I hope this didn't scare you off. It's not too complicated. It's basically just 6 versions. Okay, 6 versions are a little bit complicated, but it's not horrible. Of course, this is not the entire story, because all of these 6 versions, they also have 4 cases that I didn't discuss today, and that of course makes it more complicated. And then also we have a different form of the definite article where we put in front of the word, and it's self-standing, similar to the in English and die, der, das in German. But this self-standing definite article is a very high-level Icelandic, I would say, used only in like poetic speech and very formal speech, so let's just not worry about this for now. Right now, the greinir might seem a little bit complicated, and I guess it is compared to other languages, but at the end of the day, the greinir is going to be your friend. Okay, so if you learn it very well, if you learn it both now, I've only talked about one case, but you learn it now and then you learn it very carefully in all the other cases, then it is very regular. So it's the same for all the words. Okay, and this means that if you see a word that has the greinir, then it can immediately tell you what is the gender of the word and also what case is the word in. And this might not always be obvious otherwise. So in the end, the greinir is going to help you more than it hurts you, I think. Here is a simple overview of what we talked about in this lesson. Just press pause and then take all the time that you need to review it. So for the homework today, I'm going to ask you to add the greinir to different kinds of words. Even if you know the greinir fairly well, I still recommend that you do the exercises, because it's always good to practice. We will start with the masculine singular words, and one thing I'd like you to notice is that not all masculine singular words in Icelandic have the same ending. Now press pause, take all the time that you need, and now I will give you the answer. So the answer is for masculine singular words: karlinn, kötturinn, krumminn, boltinn, greinirinn, and jökullinn. Now let's move on to the masculine plural words. And I'd like you to pay attention and notice that even though these words had very diverse endings in the first slide in the singular form, now most of them, almost all of them, end with an R. So let's just begin. Bættu greini við þessi orð. Press pause and take all the time that you need. And now I will give you the answer. So these words with the greinir are karlarnir, kettirnir, krummarnir, boltarnir, jöklarnir, and finally mennirnir. Now let's move on to the female words. And as before, I'd like you to notice that not all of them have the same ending. But here you only have to focus on adding the article, or as we say, Bættu greini við þessi orð. Singular female, take all the time that you need, press pause, and then now I will give you the answer. Skeiðin, íslenskan, örin, perlan, ævin og klukkan. Now let's move on to the plural, female. And as you can see, we had all these different endings before, but now in the plural, all the female words magically have R at the end. So press pause, take all the time that you need, and now I'm going to assume you did this and give you the answer. The greinir in the female plural form is quite easy because it's always the same. So we have skeiðarnar, buxurnar, örvarnar, perlurnar, ævirnar, and klukkurnar. And now on to the neutral words in the singular form. And if you're paying really close attention, you might notice that we have the same word here as in the female version, where we had ör, and now we also have ör, but the meaning is different. Now it means a scar, and before it meant an arrow, and the grammar is different, including the greinir. So now let's just get on with it. Bættu greini við þessi orð, press pause, and now I will give you the answer. And here is the answer. Hafið, eplið, örið, námskeiðið, lýsið, and tungumálið, which literally means like a tongue language. Now we move on to the neutral plural, and you can see that the wonderful rule where most of the plural in the female and the male words, it does not apply here. Instead, there are very many neutral words that look the same in the singular and in the plural form. However, their grammar is different, including the article. So, bættu greini við þessi orð, press pause, and now I will give you the answer. Here are the results for the neutral plural. Höfin, eplin, örin, námskeiðin, jólin, and tungumálin. And it's worth noting that jól or Christmas is an intrinsically plural word, so it doesn't exist in the singular. We always say jólin. In real life, unfortunately, the words are not grouped together by gender and whether they're plural or not. So let's do one final exercise where we have everything sort of mixed, but I still give you the gender and whether it's a singular or plural, because otherwise I think it's fairly impossible for most of you. So, and now one final time. Bættu greini við þessi orð. Press pause, take all the time that you need, and now I will give you the answer. Löndin, mamman, jólasveinarnir, maturinn, vatnið, and dæturnar. I now hope that the greinir is fixed on your brain and you will never forget it. If this exercise was easy for you, that is fantastic. If it was hard, don't worry, we will come back to the greinir again and again. Thank you for participating in today's lesson. Bless, bless.